bring you the finest of the industry experts. Moving on, I would love to call upon Mr. Avik Chanda. With over 2 decades of global Big Four consulting experience, Mr. Avik Chanda is a business advisor, corporate speaker, visiting faculty at IIT Delhi, XLR, best-selling author, and a columnist. Avik is the founder and CEO of Nova L&D LLP, a startup poised to disrupt the personality profiling ecosystem. It's a pleasure to have you, Mr. Chanda, and looking forward to the session and your intriguing discussion with the panelists.
Lovely to be here. So, a very good evening, viewers, and welcome to this special episode at SpeakIn called The New Age of L&D. Now, suffice it to say that the global pandemic outbreak has thrown everything, all notions of a norm, the way we live, the way we work, and of course, the way we learn, into jeopardy. And we are constantly grappling with what seems to be a constantly changing new normal or the new usual. Now, turning the lens and focus onto learning and development at the workplace, this evening I shall be speaking with 3 stalwarts from the industry: Mahim Mongia, former head of L&D, OD and talent management, Jumbo Electronics Dubai; Ravi Panchal, head of L&D, Lendingkart; and Vineet Aswani, head of talent development, Colt Technology Services. A very warm welcome. Good evening to all of you. So Mahim, we'll get started with you. Let's first lay out the landscape of this new L&D. What are we talking of in terms of framework, in terms of mode, and maybe also in terms of content?
Thanks, Avik, and thanks, SpeakIn, for this opportunity. Answering this question, I would like to break it into 2 parts quickly. First, what has not changed or probably was already under the process of change and probably has been accelerated. I would say three questions from the business. How does L&D enhance the performance? How does L&D makes the organization ready for the future? So that question still continues, and all the more in the current pandemic. What are the skills which we would need in the future? From the employee perspective, employee and manager perspective, it continues to ask or ponder on how do we deliver the learning? How do we make it more relevant? And again, from a pandemic or the current situation point of view, we need to answer that, yes, online learning is the way forward. How do we utilize it, or how do we make it more effective, till we can have the face-to-face, so to say, learnings. The third important aspect, again, from an HR point of view, that how does this all link up to our other, so to say, HR framework, the overall HR system, the ecosystem, the various other systems. So how do we link these 3, the business, the employee and manager, and the HR, in the current scenario, is probably what we need to ponder upon in the future, around the skills, around the way we deliver, and how do we link up to HR.
Right, absolutely. So Ravi, will come to you next. Building on what Mahim told us, in terms of the how part, is it fair to say that the technologies and tools that were in place earlier are still going to be predominantly the same, and the new L&D is more going to be in terms of the content or the way we deliver it, or are the tools and technology themselves going to see a sea change going forward? What's your view?
Thanks, Avik. And echoing to Mahim's thoughts here, it's definitely there. If we talk about the how part, technology and tools, it's a twofold answer for me. One is there are organizations who have not yet adopted, online e-learning and social learning approach in its full capacity. They'll have to change. That's where the change would come into play. So that's where they'll have to start adopting it. They'll have to embrace it. They'll have to, start working on those lines. Then there are organizations, and I would say probably, from my best guesses, is around 30–40% who have already full-fledged technology-oriented organization in terms of learning. I think what's happening there is the intensity of the technology usage is going to increase. So obviously, the amount of instructor-led training, the amount of that individual customized approach that used to happen on ground is going to come down a little bit, and that would go to the online learning and the technology platform. So that is where we see the change happening. In terms of how piece, I think it's more about now it's a time to make the content more relevant, because this last 3 months and so to say the 4 months change the dynamics of working culture drastically. So what used to happen, in terms of the content of work culture, office environment, your discussions around the coffee place, has now changed to online discussion, have now changed to a different mold altogether. And if your training content is still that same old training content wherein you used to talk about how do you network at coffee place and how do you network at the you know tea stall, or the sutta place, so to say, in Indian way,
Right.
that needs to now change, because that's not happening now, right? So that's how I see that the content needs to be revisited, needs to be more customized to what it is now, going to be the new normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Vineet, we'll come to you next. And speaking of work culture, I think you are definitely working in an on-site offshore kind of a model, right? Because just before we got started, we were saying that you're working UK times, for instance, right? So play out the work culture part and play out, because there is a global pandemic outbreak. So even in the UK, in your PLC or elsewhere in the world, wherever your stakeholders are, Vineet, right, or your clients are, the pandemic is more or less the same. There is a tremendous amount of impact and disruption. When you're talking about L&D, how do you homogenize the experience across borders, across geographies?
I think that's a very interesting twist to the question that we started with. And very interestingly, what's happened is that this pandemic has given everyone a level playing field, definitely. So we're not culture dependent or contextualizing it for anyone. I think it's something more common and understandable by all. To my mind, we were in some discussions the other day, and we said, if we were to go back in the times to come and ask this question, saying what brought in the real digital transformation in the L&D space, we may not be able to give a name of an organization or an industry. Maybe we will have to give this credit to the virus, that it really got us to understand what digital transformation is. There was limited respect for the digital models. And hence, as Mahim and Ravi both mentioned, we were adopting. And that's been accelerated to a very large degree. Culturally, everyone is attuned to it. And we are embracing this change a lot better than how we would have done it in the past. In fact, the whole model, in our organization, we've tried to look at it in a more tier-based approach, where we say that L&D has a tier 1, which is how do we design and build and execute everything end-to-end through an L&D function. The tier 2 could be how do we be consultants and connect them to the right sources from there they could learn. Or the third source, which is now becoming equally important and prevalent, is how do we facilitate self-access by creating technology platforms. And what's the biggest shift is from it being a learning intervention. I think we are now moving into learning journeys, which will make a huge difference in this whole virtual approach.
So what you're saying is it's less staccato, it's less discrete, it's far more of a continuum, albeit some peaks and troughs along the way in terms of value add and learning.
Absolutely.
Great. Let's take a step back. I mean, there is this popular perception that as long as my tools and technology are in place, all that I would have to do is take whatever content I have and make it online friendly, make it online deployable, right? And as if I have just this panacea, right? I have this one word, one phrase mantra online, make everything online. And then obviously it cuts across borders, it's real time, it's recorded, it's scalable, it's cost effective, great. So Mahim, would you agree to this perception? Are there no pitfalls of online learning?
Oh, definitely.
I would totally, in short, I would say definitely. Online cannot replace probably the human touch and feel. A small example: all of us are wanting to have that water cooler conversations, right? So I think uh, if we say that learning is about enhancing competencies, which is knowledge, skill, and attitude, and I divide learning into these three segments, or I see it from these three lenses, right? So most of the content, or the webinars, the online learning, is largely focused on knowledge, right? It's more like spray and pray, So I talk about a certain subject, probably I learn something about it. Next day, maybe I forget about it, right? Which
Yes.
even in our corporate space, we always wonder how do we make it more effective, right? When it
Yes.
comes to skill and attitude, technology might help till a certain extent. So probably skill and attitude could be about social learning, could be about coaching, could be about practicing, wherein online can, yes, play a part, and it has to play a part now when probably offline cannot happen. But I would say that in that part of enhancing competency or learning, probably offline still you know takes its precedence.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Absolutely. So, Ravi, would you like to expand on that a little bit more? What, in your view, if we say that at least for the time being, we will have to be heavily reliant on online modes of learning, is it that we can make the learning more synchronous, whereby there is more interaction, there is more engagement, as opposed to canned modules or recordings, which do not, I mean, forget about the water cooler conversion, the conversation. I cannot even have an engagement. I can't even ask the instructor anything if it's in a completely canned, recorded, asynchronous kind of a mode that I just download, that I just record, and then at the end of this, there's this assessment that I have to just, pass. So Ravi, what could be some of these modes? And I'm just hazarding a guess in terms of making it more synchronous, making the interactive more, even if it's online.
Avik, to begin with, it just cracks me up when I still see, those PPTs with the recorded voices on screen, right? So I think most of the organizations have gone away with, or probably, those who are adopting. See, I think it's a phase. When you try to change everything that you have into this online mode, more accessible mode, you start with somewhere. So probably I recall myself, doing that back in 2011, 12, probably 14, wherein, we were using the first version of Articulate storyline and just recording those people with the voiceovers. And in current days, if I see somebody sending me such a work, a module, I would just, first, of course, I'll definitely not engage, and it will crack me up, basically. So definitely we have moved to understanding the psychology of online learning, which everybody needs to adapt. And we need to understand that obviously that engagement level is not going to be that much as you were on the instructor-led learning, right? Wherein you were able to connect, you were able to look at others, you were able to, the aura, everybody's energy used to take you up and, go through that learning. Over here, it's probably my semi-dark room, right? And I'm trying to do
Yeah.
something out there. So that mindset needs to change, needs to shift. I'm a firm believer of the concept that if you want to learn, you'll get it. So for you, there, whether it's an article, whether it's a recorded voice or PPT, or whether it's a super engaging content with a lot of interactions and gamified content, because it's you want to learn and you know where you have to straight away apply. If you start creating that clarity towards a learner in terms of what is it that they want to learn and how is it is that learning, I think they'll adopt to any forms of that's available to them, basically at what level the organization is. So when I say that, of course, still, while we are facing heavy, while we are facing this whole situation where we are heavily relying on online learning, there are ways to still make it interactive. Okay, there are ways to make it, still social. So, like, at Lendingkart is when we send a concept. Okay, we still do send a pre-reading. So just get acquainted to the concept. Come to
Right.
the webinar, come to the workshop, and that's where we'll probably again go through some of the concepts, but more of where do you apply. Look at some examples, and then there will be separate section allocated in that webinar, or probably a couple of days later a separate meeting wherein it's just a social learning. Talk about where have you applied. Okay, so you know what, out of 10, 15, 20 odd members, only one or two would have applied that learning and got something out of it. But that one or two, when they speak about it, it kind of energizes and engages the other, saying that, oh, probably this can work, I'll try to do it. That, that psychology is still there, which used to happen at the water cooler conversations that
Yes.
Mahim told, and which is now happening. But we need to give them that platform. So if we just give them the content and just never come back to them again, that's probably we lose the engagement. That's probably we lose the whole a learning piece of it. So we'll have to create a framework around the whole content piece, wherein you give them the content, you give them platform, you give them to learn amongst each other. And I'll quickly give you an example. So I'm currently taking one a refresher course, and the course is called Psychology of Learners. It's
Mm-hmm.
available for free. It's by Australian body. Now that whole course when I went through, it's just articles. So I was thinking that, okay, it's an Australian body trying to create a course, and there will be a lot of videos and engagement. I'll learn a lot of things, and it's still a lot of articles. Everything that
Okay.
I've gone through so far is just articles. So you click next, there's an article, you read it. But what they've done is, after every article, the author and the learners would connect on the comment section. So you
Okay.
read the article, you write in your own words whatever you learned. Where does it still apply? Does it not
Mm-hmm.
apply? Are you facing challenges? And the author responds. They real time respond to your. I think that's where the engagement is happening. So I'm not learning more from the articles because probably that's not my style of learning. But that comment and engagement thing that's happening, I'm learning from there. So whatever content form of content you have, I think if it's on you how engaging you can make it, and what kind of platform you can provide to your learners, so that that social learning piece does not go away, and you are able to provide them with something which is more engaging to them.
Absolutely. Um, so, Vineet, how are you going about it at Colt to make the learning experience more engaging, more meaningful for the individual employees, for the learners?
So I think, picking the thread from what Ravi said, one of the significant barrier that we broke was to build a sense of purpose. Because if there was a sense of purpose in what they were doing, models won't be a barrier to their learning. So we've recently started a management development series, which covers close to about 1,000 odd managers across the spectrum. It's a journey that we've built, which has around a variety of courses that they go through. There are times when they have to apply those back at their workplace. There are smaller study groups created for them to work with each other, to get the same feeling as you would get in a classroom where you're given a small activity.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're expected to report it back in a certain structured form using their own creativity. And this whole plan will probably go above 5 months as a period. So what we've tried to do is, at least for the 5 months, we've gotten them completely engaged and busy, especially during these times of pandemic where people are thinking a variety of things that they possibly shouldn't be thinking on. So we've just, focused their thinking in a certain direction. We've gotten them small study groups to come together so that there is still the feeling of doing the things together in a study group. And of course, we've added some more leaders from the organization who volunteered to steer some of these smaller sections of groups in a certain direction by encouraging them and directing them on what needs to be done. So this has possibly gotten us a blend of using certain digital learning platforms, using Zoom or webinars as a platform, and using self-paced learning within their own smaller groups and come back with their findings to the larger unit. So that's really helped us sustain this entire model and bring some life to the virtual environment as well. So the whole blandness of this model has been slightly tweaked to make it more interactive and interesting.
That's fascinating. So,
Just to,
gentlemen, we are, yeah,
Avik,
please
just sorry to interrupt.
go
Just
ahead.
add, I mean, you know what Zoom did is created that breakout rooms, right? So
Hmm.
if you're doing a course or a training in Zoom, you can buy some breakout rooms wherein you can, you know, randomly the software will assign a couple of people, bring them into a room, and in that breakout room, only you and the other person, you know, in your team. The way we used to have the breakout sessions in the last
Yes.
workshops, right? So I think still, as I said, the concepts are still the same. You know, of engaging our audience. It's just that we will now use technology, through that. You know, just to add what Vinny's point, that we need to have that, you know, different forms of the availability of technology and how we can use it to engage our audience. That's more important.
Right, absolutely. So we've come to what is kind of like the halfway mark for our discussion. So let me very quickly summarize where we're at the moment. And if you're talking about the building blocks of the new L&D in terms of a methodology, in terms of a framework, probably in increasing order of importance or urgency, it's A, to look at the set or the suite of tools and technology and kit and see what kind of calibration that needs, what kind of revisitation and optimization that needs. That's number one. Two, look at ways of engaging. How do I have the same technology? Of course, let's assume that's optimal already. Then how can I rebuild on the content part of it? How can I work on the content part of it to make it more interesting? And after that, how can I deliver that content in a way that makes it more engaging, more meaningful, more interactive, maybe through audiovisual, through Q&As, live Q&A sessions, where you have the ability to ask the instructor or maybe pose questions and then the instructor gets back to you. So there's a two-way feedback that's going in, which completes the circle. And right up on top, can we use this entire construct? Can we use this entire edifice to reinstill a genuine interest in learning through, the whole art of making it more meaningful and instilling a sense of purpose? Because if it's just a chore, if it's just a checkbox, right? I have to do 50 hours of learning every year. Every course, this course or this in this particular quarter, this course is 25 hours. I have a credit. It's a checkbox that I've ticked. As opposed to that, if we can have a sense of purpose coming in, that inverts and that sort of, sublimates this entire experience. Now let's move forward, because we've talked, I think, quite comprehensively about the how of it. But can we take a step back and ask ourselves maybe an even more fundamental question? Mahim, we start with you. The what of it? I mean, in a business as usual, pre-pandemic, pre-COVID period, right? Many corporates, there are different terminologies, but essentially you will have a training needs assessment that's done department by department. You will have a skills gap. There will be a skills matrix. There will be squaring A against B. You'll come up with a gap. Then for each of these gaps, you come up with a training program and then you deliver it, right? Now, be that in terms of the methodology, but more importantly, the what part of it. What is it that we need to learn? Has that fundamentally shifted as a result of the pandemic and as a result of the ongoing disruption? The what part?
Yep. Yep. So I think definitely, if I see the what part, and considering the unprecedented way the pandemic has changed the way we work, right? So two or three things definitely come at the top of the mind when we talk about the skills we need to have right now. The first one being the usual way for a lot of industries like IT, ITS, probably they were already used to working from home, the new way of working. For a lot of other industries, that whole process of work has now changed. So somebody who's used to a physical office environment now needs to adapt to the new environment wherein your meetings are online, you have to use different means, right? So the first part is the basic fundamental work, the ways of working which has changed, and how do we enhance the capability of our people to adapt to that. The second is because of the uncertainty. There is, so every day we hear something new, and it kind of affects us mentally, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we develop that resilience, right? So it was always being talked about earlier as well, but now currently, not just for senior leaders, I think across the organization, how do we manage our mental health, our emotions? How do we build that resilience and get attuned to this
Right.
new normal? I think these two skill sets invariably across sectors would definitely uh,
Mm-hmm. I mean, I mean, if I put it in a different way, right? I mean, it's not as if we never thought of resilience or grit
yeah,
as unimportant, but we always thought that, be that at a leadership level or be that at a very junior team member or even an intern who's just joining, resilience is something that's like a buffer. You save it for a rainy day, right?
yeah,
But now,
yeah,
right now, it's raining.
yeah,
It's not just raining, we have cyclones in the East Coast and in the West Coast, right?
absolutely,
So it's that
absolutely,
important, it's that
yeah,
fundamental for us
yeah,
to have resilience.
yeah.
Build on that, if you will, please, Ravi. So resilience is one thing that we've established, definitely. What could be the other things, the other skills, the other attributes?
I completely agree to way you put it, right? It was not, it was not there previously. It is more about, what is the context now?
Mhm.
And with the current, situation where, there are companies which are laying off, there are companies which are doing restructuring, there are companies which are, trying to identify how we can do best with, what we have. Probably, hold on the upcoming hiring piece and, get the best out of the employees now. So of course, the resilience piece comes into it, but I think, what needs to be put forward, or what fundamentally needs to be done, is that leaders needs to come out and share that why piece with the all of the employees to make this resilience work. So it's not that previously you were not supposed to be resilient. It's now, as you said, now is the time that you will have to do more for what you are paid for, and you cannot just say no to it. There will be a lot of work that might just come to you. You might have to do multitasking. You might have to do a lot of things uh, that 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 might be not on your agenda list, until now. But the last 3 months have changed things drastically. So being open, to all fronts of work is something that is going to become very prominent. So if at all there is a way I can manage two tasks with one resource as an organization, I am going to look at it, because 3 months, 4 months of a hit in terms of a business is a huge hit to see how my profits are going to be affected. So of course, on my chart, resilience was one item again. Mahim kind of took it away, and for obvious reasons, Mahim. Now the thing is that beyond that, there are certain things which were not happening before, which I now have to manage. So I need to understand that, how I going to make changes to that, as Avik, you mentioned at the start of it, like the TNI that happened, and A versus B, and the skill gap that we were identifying. Um, do we have to do that TNA again? Probably no. More so from a business side, the functional piece, the overall objective is not going to change. My products are not going to change. My industry is not going to change. So that piece is still going to be the same. However, I need to now fill the skill gap that might just come ahead, in the near future. So make my employees ready, with what needs to come their way, make them future ready, so to say. And in doing so, I see a couple of things that will be more prominent. One is, it will be everybody's job to be more innovative. Okay,
Okay.
it will be very important for everyone to identify that, okay, how can I manage this task in a better way, in more efficient way? How can be a little more innovative? And how can I automate more things? So there are a lot of tools that are currently available, which are free of cost. If there are certain things that you used to do, you can use that tool, and now the tool can automate that small process, for you.
Sure.
Because I recall in my previous assignment with Standard and Poor's, we run, 2017 was the year when we run the whole campaign of automation for all,
Mhm.
and we were making this awareness courses. So probably we're thinking at that point in time, but we never knew, obviously, that pandemic is going to come and is going to be more important than ever. But then again, instill that thought in every employee that automation, innovation is not only a leader's job. I need to look at it at my level. So that understanding is important. So how can I start being more efficient in doing more, giving more productivity to my organization, is something that needs to start coming in from within, and that is a cultural thing, which everybody needs to adapt, embrace, and which needs to be instilled from the management and top to bottom approach. So when we start running campaigns and that thought, we saw millions of dollars saved through automation, through lean programs at Standard and Poor's, and those were small bets. So even at a HR recruitment side, if something was done a little bit manually, we made use of a tool, and now 13 man hours were saved in this process, and then 25 man hours
exactly.
are saved in this process. And when at an organization like as large as S&P, 22,000 employees globally, when we started measuring everything, those small bits and changes that we were doing because of that program, the cost benefit was into millions of dollars. So,
Absolutely.
so that is something that I see that will be more prominent now. Like those are the skill set which will be like everybody's job now, and not just for the leader.
So Vineet, just to recap, right? What we're saying is we've got two kind of dimensions. One is purely around the behavioral attributes. We're talking about innovativeness, better ways of time management, being able to do more in less time, and of course, absolutely core resilience. But in addition, it's also a question of maybe technological skills, whereby we are automating processes which are kind of like semi-manual or more hybrid, and make them more sort of man-machine going forward. Weigh in on this. What would you like to add here?
I think one more component that we must bring in is that how do we actually now develop the transferable skills in people? With some of the changes that we are witnessing in the industry today, many of the businesses will have to be remodeled, innovated, and hence everything that we do today on the outside will have to change. If that has to change, then do we currently have all our people whose current skills can be moved into another domain or another dimension of the organization? And are those transferable skills being developed in a more structured way or no? That's I think an important question that organizations need to address. Because otherwise, in the past, how it's been that, if I had a certain set of skills, I could grow and continue to be in that vertical or that space. But that whole scenario may now change. Hence, more agility, more willingness to take risk and experiment with the different domains has to come in people, and L&D will play a critical part in supporting and enabling people to work on some of these transferable skills. So that's a clear.
Yes. So let me do this, right, Vineet. Let me take a cue from what you just said and try and develop the fourth theme for this evening's discussion. You talked about transferable skills. So let me play two things. A is transferable skills, the new set of skills, because I have to do more with less time and with more people because we've lost time, so catching up time as well. Particularly because there's also workforce rationalization that's happening across the board. Sad but true. But intrinsically, there is another dimension as well, where we are talking about things like innovativeness, we're talking about things like time management, talking about things like resilience. So if we revisit the way that we traditionally or up till now have done evaluation, right? And that can be evaluation purely in terms of assessment or evaluation in terms of traditional modes of psychometrics. Right? And I ask this particularly because all three of you have undergone different kinds of formats and tools and frameworks and know the pros and cons of all of that. So this is, I think, an important point for us to conclude the discussion. Mahim, again, we'll begin with you. What would you think? Is there at all a need to review what we've been seeing, what we've been doing and using in terms of evaluation metrics and psychometrics at all?
I think, so I would say psychometrics, which all of us have been using, whichever brand we talk about or whichever tool we talk about, are quite robust, quite well validated, tested and used, across the industry, across countries. But one thing which I have not been able to find, in a way, is something which measures or evaluates your digital dexterity, or how do you adapt to the digital world, which is all the more important now. So if I can break this evaluation into not really a competency but three levels, your ability to know and use digital, that would be level one. Your ability to think and do digital, and your ability to drive digital, right? So if you see our organizations, right? So at present, everybody needs to at least have level one, know and use digital, right?
Right.
And some of us would probably need, to redesign the work processes and think and do digital. And some of us would be very experts in AI and big data, would really need to drive digital and change the business models. So there is definitely a need for a tool to evaluate, and it would have some component of, your functional and behavioral skills. It will be a combination of both. It's not purely either or, which should be able to help us identify where I stand currently and how I can, build it forward, because this is going to be a constant now.
Yeah, absolutely. Ravi, do you want to build on that? The very fact that, the mode is changing, the way we are engaging is changing, the content is changing. So the evaluation per se will also have to change in terms of adaptability, in terms of learning effectiveness, and also, as we said, right? Because in terms of the intrinsic behavioral skills for psychometrics, what's your view here?
See, while I definitely agree that psychometric tools help us deliver the baseline or set the baseline in terms of what is the purpose and what is the whatever psychometric tool it is, as a personality type or leadership traits or behavior type, whatever we are using for that matter. However, I have always advocated that relying on psychometric tool to 100%, because it's to me it's always situational. Though somebody tells me that I can give you your type indicator, how you typically communicate or behave, but I feel that in current times situation change so fast.
Sure.
And the environment around which I work changes so fast, so my behavior is tend to change.
Change as well.
It's very hard to generalize it from that perspective. Still use psychometric tools to at least get an understanding around what is the base level type of the personality, leadership trait, what do they like more, don't like. So that is what it helps me, but I do not base my results into those tools alone. I rather would want to customize the approaches based on the circumstances and situations that are there. But I also feel that when you rightly put forward this question, and these tools this whole tools, how long we have been using this, and then they have not changed already. I have seen very few tools which adapt to the recent change, and we see changes in the types and the questions that the tools typically ask. I think it's about time that as Mahim mentioned, that we need to add lot more on digital side, lot more on understanding people, because I can recall a couple of psychometric tools and the questions are like, I generally relate to people more. Now this whole relates to people more things have different perspective and situations.
Yes.
How am I going to do it now when I'm not in office? so those things are going to be should be factored in. But I would definitely say that at least if you really want to start doing a study of your leadership team and their traits, and understand where they currently are, so that you can help them customize something based on your delivery approach that you would want to build. It's a good way to start, but that's not the only tool that you should have to bring out your results or customize your approach towards what you want to build for that.
Okay. So Vineet, what's your view on this matter?
I think interesting subject, a very, very deep subject to my mind. And
Yes.
And I think what's very critical for us to understand is there were a natural what the evaluations gave us was largely in terms of what's our natural style and what's our adapted style. Yeah. And adaptation came in because we were in a certain set of situations. Today, large part of that adaptation has been taken away.
Right.
We're operating in environments which are very different and largely natural. Yeah. Some of the assessments and psychometrics have always said that in life-changing situations, many of these indicators could change. I think we are going through a life-changing situation.
Situation as we speak, absolutely, like literally day by day. Yes.
So it's just possibly coming together. And it's time to re-look at some of the questions, definitely. And also the models. Like, for example, the whole recruitment model is now going to shift virtual.
Yes.
And that's the first point. You know, why do you have people inside the organization? You may assess a little, you know, improperly. You still have the scope to deal with it. But at the recruitment stage, if your assessment doesn't go well, then the correction are always very expensive. And hence, I think right at the forefront, some of these assessments and psychometrics will have to play a lot bigger role. Because now we won't have the person as much in an in-presence interview. So that's a dimension that definitely going to shift. With this shift, how people will adapt to all of this and how methods of protecting and encrypting some of these assessments will become even more important for all of us. So as we may call all of this today as new normal, I'm a little hesitant to call it the new normal. I'd rather say we are responding to the times, but if we were to create a new normal, I think all of us can do a better job. We could possibly think deeper and make a better new normal. This is more a reaction, and I think we're responding.
This is more a response as opposed to, because the moment you say normal, there is at least a subliminal sense that it is some kind of a plateau. It's some kind of an equilibrium state. Yeah. It's not like a complete, quiver, right, of a curve, which is exactly what we are going through in every 24-hour space. So before we wrap up the discussion, I was just going through the questions that have come in. We've covered pretty much all of them. How and what are the new ways in which training would be done? How much would it change due to the pandemic situation? What would be some of the implications, particularly financial implications? We kind of touched upon that tangentially. But one very interesting question that I would like each of you to weigh in on before we conclude is the question. I'll just read it out as it reads. It says, most of the time, we see a disengagement between what L&D is driving at and what business needs. Though this collaboration, basic expectations, what could still be missing in some of these organizations? And I'll kind of rephrase that. Is there is there really a gap? And B, does this give us an opportunity to bridge that gap or bring it closer?
Yeah.
Why don't we do reverse order? Vineet, you go first.
I've been looking at this question right from the time it was posted, and really itching to come to answer this one. I think it comes from people's experience, and we've also all seen that many a times in the organization, L&D becomes like an on-demand supply of what is needed. So there's a set of instructions given, we align ourselves to those set of needs and just go blindly. Or I would rather use a word saying focused in delivering those without realizing how is it necessarily solving a business problem. So in the pre-pandemic times, it worked. Not that I'm saying it worked effectively.
Perfectly.
It worked, it's sustained. But in the new times, when everything is anyway a question, then this will play an even more critical part of how do we engage with the businesses? How do we really understand what do they really need in order to grow? How does my solution align to their business growth strategy and people growth strategy? And what set of levers I can measure towards the end of my intervention to say, what shift have we really brought in people?
Right.
So the whole approach has to be more business driven. When I say business driven, it's not the economics of business, but the mathematics of business, or the statistics of business, saying, how are we really understanding the pulse of the business? how are we really responding to that pulse? And how are we really then creating solutions which are business centric and show tangible improvement in people? Like one of the things in our organization we're trying to drive is internal growth. Now, when you try and drive internal growth, it's easy to go and push this as numbers. Well, what you really need to make a difference is, are you really upgrading people's skills to what their current and future needs are, skill needs are?
Right.
And that's the addressal we will have to do a lot more concrete than just, surface level intervention.
And again, I'm going to come back to the point that you made earlier when you're talking about individuals from an individual learner's perspective, right? As long as it's transactional, as long as it's mechanical, even if you teach me tensor calculus and you ask me to solve really spacey, in the literal sense of the term, problems, it will still be just that. I will still not see the bigger picture. So to your earlier point, until and unless this is closely correlated, this is integrated to the overall purpose, and I as an individual learner also have a higher sense of purpose and a sense of meaning in doing this learning as an updation, as a value addition, probably it'll still kind of be, only that much effective. Ravi, your concluding thoughts, views on this?
No, absolutely. The way Vineet, project. Now we need to understand and the answer to this question. And this is. I mean, let me tell you, you are not the only one who faces. So whosoever has posed this question, every one of us have gone through this at some point or time or the other. Now, what we need to really understand is that how much buy-in we were able to create when this whole exercise of TNI, whether it has happened formally, informally, and let us accept the fact. I mean, so many people in L&D and network. There are some organizations who typically do not even do formal TNI. Okay, and they just phase out on that the learning approaches on in discussions with the CXOs, and that's where I feel this is needed. Learning happens. Instead of do I have some statistics to back on it, that is it something, and what typically happens is when you start doing it, the other business leaders do not see much of the impact that they felt could have been done, and they question it in those bigger grounds, and that question comes back to you. Now the way I see it is based on my experience and how do I deal with this situation is that one, I would have to ensure that whenever I am saying that, okay, from an L&D standpoint, this is the learning intervention that we're trying to implement. Who are the influencers, who are the champions, that from a business side that are with me. And if I have those, so if I have like right now, I have a team of, I think we have 14 CXOs in Lendingkart. And if I include VPs and all and above, we are close to what 30, 35 odd members. Now, how out of that 35 odd members, do I have 10 who are completely with me when I'm launching something which is going to help them, impact them, and which is going to they're going to generate some efficiency out of these learning interventions? Then I have done my job properly, and I can bet on it. You will not have, all 35 with you, probably not even 50% with you, because our job as an L&D professionals is trying to see what is it that the majority of the organization currently needs. We can put that as a priority, and the rest is something we can, customize and probably outsource or probably find a way to cater to those in a different way, which your attention is not needed. So that is where the strategy would come into play, and I would say that okay, I did something that was important for this particular business, orgs within the org, and this is the impact that I'm trying to create. And then there will be those 5-10 people who would always come and say that probably you did nothing, things.
Yeah, but naysayers are always
which is quite okay. As a professional, let's just learn to live with it.
Absolutely.
You can, you'll have to focus and channel your energy into that one thing, that can really create an impact for that business org and deliver that out to them. And eventually, after 6 months, when you've done it right, others would come on the board as well, because that would start speaking for itself, saying that, okay, this intervention was good. There's an impact that was created. I still feel, when some managers come back to me from, my previous organization, Standard Poor's, and they say that, can I have that PPT? I want to do it for my team. And that's where kind of, I still take pride, that when you did create something and you delivered something and it created an impact on somebody's, life and professional life, they want to pass it on to others, and they want to give them as these are tools that you can use, which will help. This has helped me, can help you. And I think that's where it could start, seeing momentum happening. But from a business standpoint, let's also accept the fact that, you're not able to keep all the business stakeholders. You do need to have those influencers with you.
Absolutely. And Mahim, we'll come back to you and we'll give the last word to you.
Sure, absolutely. I think Vineet and Ravi very well covered on this question, but would just like to add one last point, that partly I think we as L&D professionals, practitioners, HR practitioners are to blame. So a lot of times, and all of us have been probably guilty to it, we pick up trends, we talk about gamification, social learning, all those blended learning.
Just run with those fads, right?
Yeah, we try to
without necessarily going deeper.
Absolutely. So next time, I think one tip for the person who asked this question is probably go and not go to any website about learning, but go to whatever businesses you are into. Learn more about it, be with more, more of those professionals, learn their language. Instead of talking about HR and learning, which is important, no doubt, but learn more and more of business. And that's where probably we would be able to create our credibility. Yep.
Yep. So Mahim, would you think that if we didn't have this, and this is a little interesting sort of thought experiment that I'm doing, did it really need this kind of a monumental crisis, right, for all of us to say, look, now we have to go literally to the next level. And this is not just sustained improvement, this is completely disruptive improvement in the true sort of classical sense of the term. If we had not had this, would we still be making little incremental step kind of improvements? What do you think?
I would be honest, I think with the cost pressures all of us are facing, so all the more it's important for us to show the ROI, as I think Vineet also touched upon that, right? So I would say it's like we have been thrown into the water and we have to now learn to how to swim. So we already had been doing it. It's not that we had not taken the steps, but now it's the time to make that
now it's it's brass tacks, it's survival, right?
Absolutely.
Excellent. We've actually gone a little bit over time, but I think this was an extremely engaging conversation, and I'm sure the viewers also gained very much from it. So Mahim Mongia, Ravi Panchal, and Vineet Aswani, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to all of you. Thank you, and hope to host you again soon. Viewers, hope you all enjoyed this special episode, and until then, until next time, stay safe, adhere to whatever lockdown, unlock, semi-lock, moralities are in place, adhere to those modalities and work from home to the extent that you can, and adhere to the new L&D. Here's to the new age. Thank you.
Thanks to you.